Hiya, welcome back. Just getting a couple of little jobs out of the way before we set off tomorrow. The roller failing on the bow has been giving us a bit of a pain in the backside, so I pulled it apart to have a look. I think it's actually the size of the rope is building up inside this spool here, causing it to start jamming. I want to just check the bearings, so I put this little safety line on the drum before I split it in half so I don't lose half overboard. This is it split in half so I can see the bearings are okay. It also allows me to swap the rope as well while I've got it split in half, so that's exactly what I'm going to do. There's the bearings, top and bottom. They look perfectly fine, but I'll give them a lube anyway. Tomorrow's plan is to set off from here, which is Salcombe. We've got to come out of the river here, and then we should get a nice long tack with the tide. Well, we'll book it for a couple of minutes, but it'll take us the rest of the way, all the way up to Fowey. There's a few safe havens along the way. We've got Lou, and we've got the big port of Plymouth as well. So we've got a couple of options should anything happen. Working out how long it's going to take is as easy as working out how far it is. So take your measurements from the side of the chart. I normally do it in fives because it's easy. So pick 5 miles from there to there. That's 5 spaces, so that's 5 miles. And then from outside, I'll work it off. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, nearly 7 miles. So that's 35 miles. At 5 mile an hour, that would be 7 hours. Half an hour getting out of one river and half an hour getting in the other river, and that's probably 8 hours. I take my mile readings from the side of the chart and not the top of the chart, because the top of the chart's longitude, which cuts through the earth like a Terry's chocolate orange. On the side of the chart, it's cut like a loaf of bread, which gives me an even slice of latitude. The next thing I do is I go to my favourite weather site, Windy, and I check it and I have a look what the wind's going to be doing as we're travelling and make sure that I can go. You always got to check the weather, so find out where you are, pull the chart across until you get to where you are, look at where you're going to start here. The chart's normally held up in a northerly direction, and look where you're going to go, so you get a compass angle in your head. The wind today is in a south-southwest, that sort of angle, which would give me a reach, which would be a good sail there. But unfortunately, I'm not going today, I'm going tomorrow. So let's have a look at what tomorrow's got. That's 12 o'clock, so that's sort of middle of the shift. That angle's not too bad. It's sort of a close reach for me. A little bit later on, if I'm late, it'll come too tight really, probably. I'll be washed up a little bit and I won't be able to manage that, so I'll have to go to engine. Not forgetting this is only a forecast. What could happen if the wind stayed exactly as it was supposed to the forecast? But it never does. It can be a little bit less and a little bit more, and it can have a bit more south or a bit more north. And that's why we plug in some safe havens along the way, just in case we need them. The next thing I need to look at is what the water will be doing, which way it will be flowing, flood or ebb, and at what time it changes, because you actually want to go with the ebb when you're going the same way as it, rather than be going against a flood. I use the Imray Tide app. I think it's quite good. Books are good as well, but the Tide app's just fast to use. You can click through the hours that you'll be sailing and see if there's a more favourable time to leave or arrive, and which path maybe you should take for a bit of better favourable tide. 9:30 looks about slack water with 0.2 of a knot, but an hour before that there's 0.8 of a knot against me. With a 7-hour sail ahead of me, I'm going to have to book it somewhere, so I may as well come out about 8 o'clock when I've got a bit of a wash taking me out from Salcombe into the mainstream. You can see it's favourable for me then till about 1600 before it turns against me. It just means really I'm going to book a bit of tide at the beginning here and a bit at the end here, and hopefully everything will work out just fine. Coming out of the estuary, it's very eerie out here. Lisa says it feels like a ghost ship sailing in the morning. We're going to continue out of the estuary further than we need to. We're going to go for clear water to avoid the overfalls. When we get into clear water, then we'll put a turn into 270 degrees. The fog's not letting up yet. It seems to be thickening up, if anything. It's getting closer. I reckon visibility is around 150 metres at best. It's a very good time to keep your eyes on the sea and look into this fog to see what you can see coming towards you. You get a little bit paranoid and you start thinking, what's that I can see? In the hope of things getting a little bit clearer, they don't, they get a little bit denser. And then we get a blip on the radar, so we know there's something out there, but it's not showing up on the AIS. It's just sitting out there in the fog. What is it? Well, when we get there, it's a fishing boat. We get a little bit of wind soon after and the fog lifts. We haven't got enough to sail by alone and keep a decent pace up yet, so we're motor sailing. Motor sailing just means there's a combined effort between the sails and the engine, so the engine doesn't have to work as hard as it would do on its own. This water that's running round in the cockpit comes up through the drains. The drains are all underneath here, but somehow it's been finding its way down below. When the engine went off and we just got to sail on its own, we noticed that the bilge pump was coming on down below, bailing out the bilge, and on further inspection we found that the water's been getting into the bilge from the cockpit floor. Well, as long as we know where it's coming from, it's no panic. We pumped out what was there and enjoyed the sail. We had just over 10 knots of wind and we were getting it at about 60 degrees, but we were managing to keep our 5 knots, so we were quite happy. Visibility is quite good now and the day has really warmed up as well. I find the view from the inside of this boat can be just as exciting. You seem to sit almost in the water. It bashes past the window and you know part of the action is just outside, but you're in the warm and the dry. Everything's at hand with your chart table in front of you and all your instruments. And if you're really, really lucky, you can coax somebody to make a cup of tea. Lots and lots of fishing boats on this trip. They seem to be everywhere, working hard while we're playing and having fun. We're just passing a lighthouse called Eddystone Lighthouse, and it's on a bunch of rocks in the middle of this great big bay. That's us just passing it there. We've got a little bit to go, yeah, but we're on our way. Swallow really seems to have found her groove now, and she's starting to learn that her job for the future is passage making. She seems to want a bit more wind than most to get going. When she's on a close reach, I'm finding that she likes her sails slightly on the flutter, just a little bit loose. She pulls well like this and seems to make a little bit less leeway than she does if you've got the sails bar tight. This is a 37-foot racing boat and it was going really well. In fact, it passed us, but as you can see, it didn't fly past us, it just passed us. It was called Jetstream. This next bit is really uncanny. See the fishing boat crossing the bow? It come really close to us for reasons beyond me. So I thought to myself, well, why is he coming so close? I'll have a little closer look at him. So I went to the AIS, and what happened next? You never would have guessed it. He was called Swallow 2. Fancy that. He probably went to see what Swallow 1 looked like. Well, we're still plodding along. It's still very grey outside. Lisa's decided to have a little nap down below. And I'm happy to keep my eye on everything else. Here we are, long last. Sails down, motor on. This is Fowey estuary. Motoring down the river for the first time. Everything looks quite bleak and quite grey, but I'm quite sure it's got a different face to put on when the sun's going to come out tomorrow. We call up the harbour master and he tells us to pick a blue buoy up. There's plenty of them spare on the starboard side. Well, we're here, and this has been our journey from here, along here, along here, along here, along here, along here, and all the way to here. Well, we're not on our own. If you have a look outside, there's plenty of visitors' boats on these blue buoys. They're everywhere. That's Cockerel Woods up there. All the cockerels are in it, screaming their heads off. I hope they don't do it all night. That's the opposite bank to Fowey. I don't know whether it's still called Fowey. I'll have to have a look on the chart. Here I am, forgetting my autofocus. Need to switch it on. How do I do that? That's looking across to what I consider to be Fowey at the moment, but I don't know for definite where that pink house is and so on. I'll find out tomorrow when we go for a nice day out there.
Fowey Harbour Patrol, this is yacht Chouette, just arriving.
This is where we were taking the water in. This is the seal under the floor. There's bad joints in it, very bad joints in it. And these joints are often underwater because the water fills up here and it's been coming over here and getting into the bilge when we're on attack. That's terrible. Another job for me to put on my list to do. Well, I'll put some neoprene tape in it for now.